Welcome to the CenterPoint Podcast, where nursing and law unite.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CenterPoint Podcast with Jacquelyn Maki. I'm Matt Skye, and today we'll be delving into the world of legal nurse consulting, unpacking the mysteries of complex medical issues and their legal implications. With me is Jackie. Hi, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for interviewing me.
Thank you. So let's begin with your background. What inspired you to transition from hospital administration to certified legal nurse and start CenterPoint Consulting?
So I spent my entire career in healthcare, from surgical tech through middle management and then into hospital administration. And each time that I climbed the ladder, I thought, I'll be able to make a bigger difference than I did in my last role. And what I found was that I was still hitting a ceiling and there was only so much that I could change. And so approximately 2 years into being the healthcare administrator, actually chief nursing officer of a hospital, I looked into being a legal nurse consultant and starting my own company, which would give me an opportunity to still touch patients' lives, but in a different way and making an impact that I had more control over.
So that's such a unique background. So how does your experience in clinical care and healthcare administration enhance your work with attorneys and covering various healthcare related issues and cases?
So legal nurse consultants come from all different backgrounds. Some of us have a background in surgery. Some have a background in ICU. It doesn't matter what your background is. It just helps you come into looking at records from a different angle. So for me, having a background that went all the way through administration allows me to look at a legal case that comes through that has to do with healthcare and say, okay, here's the clinical side. This is what the nurse is thinking, doing within the care of the patient. But then I can also look at a case from the administrative side and say, here are the policies, procedures that the hospital should have had in place and should have trained their people appropriately so that this incident did not occur. So it allows me to have more of a global perspective when reviewing those personal injury and medical malpractice cases for attorneys.
And can you provide an example of how your expertise has significantly influenced the outcome of a legal case?
One situation was actually a case where a patient had fallen and was hurt, and the attorney wanted me to locate experts for them. That's one of the services I offer. But before doing that, some of the things that he had told me just triggered, maybe there was more to the story. So I asked him if I could review all of the records. And so he sent me the records and I was able to say, you know what? You don't have the full story here. We are missing a bunch of records, which he didn't realize that he was missing. And after I looked at it, I was able to go back to him and say, you know what? You do not have a case here. Defense is going to hit you on multiple areas. So this had a huge impact because this stopped an attorney from taking a case that he thought was for sure a really good case. And I was able to say, stop. Don't go any further because you really don't have a case here. That made a big impact in at least the attorney's life. And now to this day, 4 or 5 years later, he's still one of my really good clients. In another situation, I was able to look at the records and help with a huge medical malpractice case that did go to trial. And I helped behind the scenes, locating the experts, but also helping with demonstrative evidence and putting together kind of a playbook for the attorney through the eyes of a nurse that has been on both sides of clinical care and administration. So it really worked well. And they won the case and he came back to congratulate me and tell me, hey, thanks for being part of this team. You really helped us bring home this reward. So it was good.
Yeah, that must be pretty valuable to be able to see things, as you said, through the eyes of a nurse. What do attorneys value most about your services? Is there one area where you find you're adding that value?
I think it depends on the attorney. So each attorney has a different way that they run their company, and I offer numerous services to them. So some utilize me just for locating their experts, and they keep coming back because they love the experts they locate. Personal injury attorneys like for me to look at their car accident cases and pick out what were the prior issues before this car accident that could get me in trouble when trying to work out how much money to try to get for this case. Is there anything that we're not seeing in the records? And that's key because they are attorneys. A lot of times they don't see certain nuances that a legal nurse consultant would find within the records. It wouldn't be something that would get their attention. And so we pull that out. With medical malpractice cases, such as things that happen within the hospital or in a nursing home, we are able to state, yes, this met the standard of care or not, and why.
What do you think those common blind spots are? Just curious.
I think that a lot of times, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, I don't want to speak for attorneys, but I know that when they come to me, they are passionate about their case. They've just sat down with a client who's been horribly hurt, and sometimes emotion can get in the way of seeing things objectively. So when I sit down, I'm looking at things objectively and saying, these are the pros to your case and here are the cons. Or, you know what, all the standard of care was met. It was a bad outcome, but the standard of care is there. And so there is no case, unfortunately. And so at times that's hard, but that is their blind spot, is that they have a lot of compassion and they believe in their case until certain things are brought forward. And that's not all the time, but really that is what we add, is a very objective view.
So your clients come to you, they have this extensive legal expertise. The medical world is unfamiliar to them. How do you help educate them in terms of complex medical issues?
I've had a lot of attorney clients that actually really impress me because they will bring up something and I'll say, oh, to myself, I have to go look this up. They know their case better than I do at times. I mean, some of them, they've been doing this for, 30 years. And so it just rolls off the tip of their tongue. They've done, X amount of cases in a certain area so much that it just flows for them. But what I add and what other legal nurse consultants add is that we tell them the story through the eyes of what it's like to have our, basically the boots on the ground. So this is what's occurring in the hospital at any given time or in the nursing home, et cetera. And so we are educating them on real life facts, how it is to actually work it, live it, breathe it. And then to back up, what they met the standard of care or they did not, we actually add things that are evidence-based from various articles that we have, et cetera, so that it's not just our word, right? But we're actually backing it with articles to say, okay, yes, we've had the experience, but then here's some scientific evidence for you so that if you don't believe me, you can go ahead and look it up.
What kind of sources do you use? Just curious when you're providing that evidence.
So it depends on the background. If you're doing an operating room case, for instance, there is the Association of Operating Room Nurses that we use. That's like the standard of care that should be used in the OR. If you are in recovery room, there's a certain group that is used for that. ICU, the same thing. So no matter where you are as a nurse, there's actually standard of care books that are written. There are also really good articles that are out there from all different sources and journals that will help. So usually we give more than just one. If I have an operating room case, I don't just give them EORN standards. I will also throw in other things that I have found along the way that will help them. And here's the other thing, Matt, that's quite interesting, is that a standard of care might be one thing today, but it wasn't necessarily the standard at the time of the injury. So if an injury happened in 2021, there might be a different way of doing things now. For instance, when I became, certified in basic life support, you always gave 2 breaths first. That was the standard of care. Give 2 breaths first after, when you find a patient or somebody on the ground and you need to give them basic life support. Now you start actually giving the chest compressions before you give them the 2 breaths. Over time, it changes. So you have to make sure that no matter what time or date your case is, that you are finding the standard of care that was practiced at that point of time of the injury.
That's a super interesting point, especially on the chest compressions. You're right, because you might have a case where it was prior to that shift, and so you have to adjust based on the time period, not what it currently is.
Correct.
How do your memberships in professional associations like NACLNC and AALNC contribute to your ongoing professional development? And maybe for those not aware, tell us what those organizations stand for.
So there are many different areas where you can go to school to be a legal nurse consultant. You basically have to be a nurse who's been practicing for a while, and then you can, take different courses. And I happen to take the course through the National Association of Legal Nurse Consulting. That's NACLNC. Through that group, I learned what it was like to see the legal perspective of things. So I already know nursing, but seeing it from a different perspective is key. And so the person who founded the NACLNC is Vicky Milazzo, who is a nurse who then became an attorney. So she wrote the playbook to help a lot of us become legal nurse consultants. And to this day, I'm still a member because I get to get on to webinars and have questions answered if I run into something that is difficult for me to take on by myself. And you meet other people in different specialty areas that can help you on certain cases. And so then they become independent contractors for me and assist me. With the AALNC, that's the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and it's the same thing. And I have been to one of their conferences last year. In fact, I was one of the speakers there, and the group is phenomenal. They are so full of knowledge, and they have actually come out with, I think, their 4th edition of Legal Nurse Consulting books, which is available on Amazon, and it gives you everything that you need, anything that you would question along the way. So it really is about having people that are strong in their field that you can run things by and that you connect with. So just like attorneys will have another attorney help them on a case, I can look up one of these nurses and say, hey, I have an ICU case. Do you want to be an independent contractor for me on it and assist me with it? And so that's the great part about having memberships with other people that think like you do for the most part, but then have a certain special area that you may not.
Yeah, it gives you an incredibly valuable, vast network to tap into, I imagine.
It does. It's numerous people. And of course, there are other associations that we become members of too, just because nurses are loving, caring people, and we can't stop being that. So we're there for each other.
I love that. It's very deeply ingrained, that helping people spirit. So how have the recognitions for your work ethic and dedication impacted your career?
Well, one of the ones that really stands out is I was a supervisor and we had just lost our director. And so I was doing more than one job. And one day I had one of the surgeons come up to me and he gave me this piece of paper. And he said, Jackie, we just want you to know that we all went to administration today and we told them that we want you to be the next director. I was floored. I had no idea they were doing it. And here was a list of all these surgeons that had signed this piece of paper that stated that they wanted me in that role. So how this plays in, you have to understand the OR. You go head to head with surgeons a lot, especially when you have to put your foot down. So as a supervisor, I was constantly having to redirect them or say, no, we can't do that. And here's why, or help facilitate things to go along faster. So a lot of times when you're in supervisory roles or middle management, you feel like you're just banging your head against the wall and wondering if by staying true to what you know to be the way it should be, how is it paying off? And here was this perfect opportunity to show that staying ethical, staying true to what you believe in and what you know to do the right thing. Even though I would go head to head with these surgeons, it paid off. They, in the long run, actually had respect for me. So in the same way, that has, as nurses, not just me, but as nurses, there's a whole section on ethics, on nursing ethics, that when we become registered nurses, we agree to, that we will put the patient first at all times, that we will advocate for them. And so if you start that young in your career and you stay consistent with it, it helps promote you. So every time that I was promoted, it was because of sticking to those values.
That's actually quite refreshing, a landscape where staying dedicated to ethics and values results in growth, not the opposite.
Right. It eventually led me to start my own company, though, because at some point you just say, all right, well, I want to be true to myself and I want to help people in a different way by being ethical and doing what I know is right for those that have been hurt.
So on that point of helping people, you've volunteered in Honduras. How does your volunteer work with sharing resources worldwide complement your professional life?
To really boil it down, it gives me the warm fuzzies. As nurses, we just have that loving side to us. And so in Honduras, we take care of pediatric patients. When I go, I can take off the hat of being a legal nurse consultant and get my hands back into nurturing others by hands-on, helping in surgery. Either I first assist and help doctors that way, or I'm circulating, meaning I'm in the operating room, opening the items onto the sterile field, helping get the patient, before surgery, after surgery. So it is 100% giving of your time, and it's refreshing. So for me, it balances me out. It fills me up, knowing that I gave in a different way. I keep my skills up for the operating room, as well as then come back refreshed and ready to take on more cases where people were injured.
So you're balancing a lot of different roles. How do you manage your professional responsibilities, your personal interests, and your volunteer work?
Matt, for me, I just live and breathe nursing. I don't ever get away from it, really. So even those that I interact with on a daily basis are other nurses or attorneys. When I go out at night, it's usually with nurses or attorneys or teachers. So for me, the balance, people have asked me that before, and I said, I don't know that I really have balance because it's just who I am and what I do. And I don't have children. So for me, it just all kind of flows together. What's the next thing that I feel I should do? Or how do I impact this person that I'm out to dinner with? It's just who I am. So I don't know that I can draw a line and say, here's my personal life and here's what I do for work.
Yeah, I can see that where it just all bleeds together, sort of. What trends do you see shaping the future of legal nurse consulting?
For legal nurse consulting, a big thing that is impacting us, as it has the entire world, is AI. AI is used by law firms now, and if legal nurses want to continue in the consulting role, so there's the expert role and the consulting role, which we'll get into in another podcast. But for consultants, a lot of things that we do behind the scenes, such as chronology work and record organization, AI is making that faster. And so there are actual companies that are promoting doing those things for less money and faster than what we can. What they don't bring to the table, though, what AI cannot replace us with, is the critical thinking. What we as legal nurses need to do is learn how to incorporate AI to make what we do more efficient and add the critical thinking point. Otherwise, if you're a behind the scenes consultant for legal nurse consulting, there is an opportunity there for attorneys to say, we don't find you valuable anymore in these areas. And that is concerning. We are really up against it right now, trying to figure that out. Now, not all law firms are doing that, but we do see when we talk about trends, and where things are going, legal nurses have to stay on top of AI. We have to find out how to incorporate it into our world.
Jackie, I think it's so true. I can't think of a single sector that's not being impacted by AI. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you implement AI and that human side?
Well, for instance, one of the things that we do are called chronologies, where the attorney will give us a stack of records from a car accident and say, can you put these in order for us and tell us on paper, write out for us what happened when. AI can do that very efficiently. They can, depending on the program, it can spit out things quite fast, but they're still having to use legal nurse consultants to go back through, make sure that it is accurate information, and then also add ideas as to what that information means. So AI can only do so much. So for instance, we find errors in medical records all the time. You have a 39-year-old female who gave birth to a baby boy, okay? You can go into records now and find that female is called he throughout, or a 39-year-old male gave birth, okay? So we, as legal nurses, as we're doing chronologies, we pick up on that right away. We just automatically change what we know to change because it is an error that is picked out. AI does not necessarily pick that out right now. And also, AI at this point is not able to critically think and say how it's going to affect their case in such a manner, the certain things that we find within a case. So for us, those that are using AI are still using the services of a legal nurse to do the critical thinking and fix the errors that AI has made right now. I'm sure AI will continue to develop and get even better. And so we as legal nurses just need to figure out how we can use AI to make it faster and better in our own industry and be able to give a product to the attorney where we're saying, hey, we use AI, but we also use our critical thinking along with it.
No, that's a great point. I do think some people assume AI can do so much and they lose that critical thinking component. And we're definitely not there yet. In terms of CenterPoint Consulting and your goals, what are your future goals for CenterPoint Consulting? How do you plan to achieve them?
This podcast is going to help. So I just plan on continuing to scale. So when people say that the company needs a niche, right? Everyone should have a niche. I say my niche is helping attorneys with healthcare related cases. That's my niche. Under that umbrella is personal injury, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence. So there are 3 different umbrellas underneath my company. And I have people that help me in each area, other legal nurse consultants and nurse practitioners under those umbrellas. And so my goal is to continue to scale. I want to continue to just grow and help as many personal injury, medical malpractice attorneys as possible under those umbrellas that I have already set up. And right now we have clients in 15 states. So we have a pretty good roll going for 6.5 years in business.
That's impressive. So as we wrap up, if you were to give our viewers one key takeaway, what would that be?
If you are a personal injury attorney or a medical malpractice attorney, you need us. We can make your lives so much easier.
I love it. Everybody, thanks so much. This is the CenterPoint Podcast with Jacquelyn Maki. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and you can follow them on CenterPointConsultingLLC.com. Jackie, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.